I am delighted to welcome His Excellency Mohammed Khalifa Al Mubarak to the stage here. Richard Armstrong, Director Emeritus of the Solomon Guggenheim Museum and Foundation. Tim Marlowe, Chief Executive and Director of the Design Museum. Harvey Mason Jr., CEO of the Recording Academy. And Ernesto Otone Ramirez, Assistant Director General for Culture at UNESCO. Please join me. Wonderful. So we have
ready? Yeah, I'm ready.
A real challenge here.
We changed the format. Yeah, Tim has a new format.
I'm game. We have a challenge because we've got 39 minutes to try to bring together some of the key ideas that we have heard, been exposed to in the last 3 days or so. So we have decided we're not going to try to do a whole wrap-up for you because we wouldn't do justice to those incredible insights. But what we're going to try to do is really think about this nexus of culture and time, how precious both are, culture and time. But also, it's incredible having His Excellency Mohammed Khalifa Al Mubarak here because really, powerhouse with his incredible team behind the Culture Summit, but the partners of DCT here that are proud to bring together all of you, online, but also here importantly present, to think about this issue of the nexus of time and culture. We heard from so many speakers, and I'll only bring a couple. Her Excellency Razan Al Mubarak spoke of the urgency to act, and this was echoed. We heard that in different sessions from different speakers here. Francesco Colombo from BAM in Milano spoke about the importance of being nurtured through culture, and we do feel we have been nurtured in the past 3 days. Importance of creation as storytelling. We heard, of course, from Professor Homi Bhabha from Harvard that we are rarely prepared for our times. So how can we be prepared for our times, but also to look to the future? Technology, change, opportunity, in addition to the challenges we face. So with that, I'd like to start with you, Your Excellency, on this issue of what we learned in the last 3 days or so, and a matter of time. What are your key takeaways when you reflect on this?
First of all, thank you. And for the audience, thank you for being a part of our family this past 3 days. And for our partners, this is what makes this summit special, because it's truly done in partnership, and it's done with a unified force that change can happen at any time. You just need to start. This summit, obviously the discussion of time was critical to many of the panels that were discussed. From my perspective, the time to act is now, on many different fronts. And for us here at the Global South, it's our time right now. It's our time to shine. It's our time to truly broadcast and preserve our culture in our way. It's our time to no longer be dependent on anyone, but to actually take the helms upon ourselves and to truly become a connecting point between East and West, a place where, just like the summit has been, a place where collective minds can come together, intellectual thought can flourish, dialogue can continuously expand, and truly discuss problems with tangible solutions. I think what we've done in this summit is bring in, with the help of UNESCO, global ministers to the stage to work hand in hand with the private sector, semi-private sector, NGOs, where it's not just we're sitting on a panel and we're just going back and forth. On the contrary, it's coming together in a circle just like this, where our issues can be put on the table and many solutions can be put on the table, and then collectively find the right solution for each party. And I think this is what makes this summit special. It's a place where it's almost, when you enter its doors, from the first moment you enter the atrium, you feel a certain level of comfort. You feel like you can, put your hair down. You can really challenge yourself and challenge your counterparts in finding the right tangible solutions for us. So, it's been beautiful to watch. I have, created a lot of, hopefully long-lasting friendships and relationships with a lot of people. I think we've seen firsthand what the summit can accomplish, where I've met, my colleagues from different nations from all over the world, from Africa to Asia to Eastern Europe to Western Europe and beyond, where we've discussed, in reality, similar challenges, just in different perspectives and different solutions. We've learned from each other, and more than ever, there was a dire want to solve solutions for each other. And I think this is what makes this special. The partners come with a level of intellect and a level of thought-provoking ideas that a place like the summit allows them to truly flourish these things at a much wider scale and broadcast it in the right way. So it's been a true pleasure. I think we have understood more than ever the opportunity we have, the opportunity that we have to rewrite to some extent the navigation of our voyages to the future. How are we going to collectively be on the same boat? How are we going to collectively champion arts in school? How are we going to champion community cultural centers collectively? How are we going to champion music? How are we going to champion collective thought? This is what I believe is the main subjects that were discussed here. But I know that this summit is going to be a differentiating factor on how we think things through. And I think we've heard from many different people here, about examples and blueprints that are happening in places that maybe in the past we didn't shed light on, or the globe didn't shed light on. And these are amazing examples and amazing blueprints for us all to learn from. I had a meeting this morning with the Minister of Culture of Nigeria, and it was unbelievable. It was just amazing what's happening over there. I had an amazing meeting from some of our friends from Paraguay. Unbelievable. Just things that you can take and, enhance them and also make them your own. But I think what's, more amazing here is the openness for somebody saying, yes, take it.
Right. That collaboration being genuine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, happy to share and wanting to share.
It is truly a sharing component that we've come together in. And again, just a thank you for everybody here. Thank you.
Well, Ernesto, that is a great moment to turn to you, because of course for UNESCO it is about that collective effort between different countries, communities and so forth. But sometimes culture doesn't get the spotlight it requires, especially in times of strain. Often culture can be relegated. So I want to ask you about your takeaways, especially as here for the last 3 days actually we've seen the elevation of culture.
Well, you know that when you are in intergovernmental organization, it's about member states. So you hear the position of leaders, ministers, from one country to the other, and it's most of the time it's on the national perspective that you exchange the experience. Here, and don't laugh, but in the last 2 days I've been hearing Cyndi Lauper in my head, trying to understand what it means time after time. And in a sense, really, I have it in my head. I woke up in the morning.
That's the theme song for next year.
Yes. And no, what I can say, and today we share this with many of you, is that I've been following since the first summit. And that's not only that you feel good, Mohammed, because you know that we have a relation of brotherhood. You have a real dialogue in this summit that each year is growing, and I believe that we are all conscious on this. There is an exchange of experience, of good practices, of good thinking, of philosophy, that it's not easy to find in a space where there is more monologues than dialogues. And in this sense, the way that you have been navigating to find over all that we are living right now, because we heard a lot of troubles, crisis everywhere, climate change, disruption of technology, artificial intelligence, the advantage and disadvantage. But at the end, when you go out after 3 days, you have many discussions that have been taking place here that you bring back to your daily job, and how you can somehow transfer those reflection that comes from civil society, from creators. Creators should be more part of all discussions. It's not easy because normally they are not heard. They are heard when they go on the streets to make strikes. But they are not able to position subjects that are important. And today the most important is that we have an urgency to put all these problems from the perspective of civil society, artists, creators, to propose some changes in the way that we are leading all those discussions. It has to be bottom up, but not only in the writing text or the recommendation. No, it has to be in actions. And in this sense, you mentioned 2 weeks ago when we had this conference on the framework of education and culture. Okay, now how we integrate everything that was worked at intergovernmental level by trying to also propose something for next summits that we integrate those things so that we can leverage and make step by step. Because at the end, what will come back from 10 years of summit will be how we reflect on our world that today is not what we want. And it's not what I have many children, so it's not the world that we want to give them back. No. Because it doesn't represent what we truly believe. And having heard all this dialogue about something so complicated that it's time, because we are talking about memory, we are talking about present, but the most important, we are talking about future. And the future, and you mentioned, has to be built by each of us. We cannot delegate this power to others. It's up to us to change the way that we are confronted to the world.
And that element of urgency and needing to act, but also thinking long-term for the future. One of the things, Richard, I'm keen to hear from you about your takeaways from here, but also thinking about this idea of preserving culture, but also how do we create the ecosystem that allows it to flourish for the future?
Well, I might be echoing what's just been said by these two learned gentlemen, but from the tiny world of museums and art lovers, it's been exhilarating to see the variety of people and points of view, and most importantly, although I was highly inspired by the poetry and music every day, and that reminded me that these are the instruments of memory, which is the essence of time. But to be in close contact with people who make political decisions, I've never experienced before. And I think that's been very rare, an unusual opportunity. I heard Homi Bhabha say that time is of the essence of our moral life, which struck me as very true and shook me, actually. And from that, my takeaway was that we should have courage to be ourselves, but we must have courage to be together also.
That courage of being together, hugely important at a time when actually we've spoken about diversity, which in the cultural sector often we look for in a positive way, but sometimes can be seen as actually jarring, and how do we make sure that diversity actually brings people together? Tim, I want to turn to you and ask you about your key takeaways from all of this, especially from a design concept.
I'll come to design in a minute. It's really brilliant hearing Richard say, with that little twinkle in his eye, about our little world of museums, because we know that museums are fundamentally important institutions. But if we believe that museums need to re-engage, reinvent, become more fluid, become more open, we cannot see them as major pillars in cultural structures. They're just part of an ecosystem and an infrastructure. And rethinking what a museum may be, it doesn't diminish its importance. And actually our responsibilities around collection and memory, but also in working and commissioning with living, creative people is critical. I mean, in my working life, the thing that has bound working for in commercial art, but also in an academy founded by artists 55 years ago to a design museum, is how we work and harness creative people to do things that they can do in their lifetime, that they can do in ways that the rest of us can't always do or conceive. And I think that's one of the takeaways of this summit, and it's been gathering momentum for the last 4 or 5 summits, that they're not Designers, artists, architects, poets, writers, choreographers, filmmakers, they're not people apart, but they have certain skill sets. They have different ways of seeing the world on occasion, and we need to listen to that. But I would also say, to Richard's point, and actually this is to praise, I try not to praise fellow panelists because it just looks too cozy, but I'm going to praise
I know, I'm going to have to
all
stir
of them.
some trouble here.
No,
This
but
is too good.
DCT and UNESCO bringing together ministers of culture from around the world. And we had, I mean, there were 9 officially, but there were more here. This is a really important initiative. We all understand, and we heard it from the prime ministers of, I think, the wonderfully underused Club de Madrid, where people's time in office is fraught. It's often an agenda to do something yesterday, or in the 3 months they've got, or the 5 years they may have. But the more we have people in power listening to and seeing what the cultural landscapes across the world do, what individuals do, what's collectively possible, the more chance we have of building these bridges. So it's that bottom up, but it's also the top down. But I just want to say one other thing, which is cheeky, but you've given me the chance. In the world that I've inhabited for the last 30 odd years, I have met many great people running institutions. But I really want to pay tribute to Richard, because this is the last time I'll get to do this on a public
absolutely.
stage. And I'm not going to embarrass him. I'm simply going to say his immense skill set, capacity, generosity of spirit, those are taken. But there are many people in my world, our world, who take themselves incredibly seriously. And Richard takes museums seriously, but with critical distance. He takes art and culture incredibly seriously, but he doesn't always take himself that seriously. And that sense of humour is a brilliant thing. Right,
Absolutely.
Enough of blowing smoke up your fundament.
And that point about the role of individuals, the creators, the bottom up, but also the individuals who for a brief moment can actually change the direction of a country, of an institution, and those who then leave and give that best practice. And I think it's been so powerful hearing from all of you that we can learn from each other, regardless of the disciplines. Harvey, I want to ask you about one of the themes that we've been hearing. With it. And so how do you make sure this goes beyond this conversation and continues to disseminate?
That's an easy answer. Everyone in the world, everyone on the entire planet is enjoying this culture. And it's our duty as cultural leaders to facilitate that, to continue to create a space for people to do what they do. I talk about it all the time. Art is magical, especially music. I'm biased because I'm a music person, but music is magical. What it does and what it creates and the emotion that it inspires, it changes the world. So to your question, what we do and what we talk about here and why this summit is so incredible and why I'm so thankful to be here is because this matters. The culture matters. The humanity behind what we create and share amongst each other really, really matters. But if I can just say a couple things about my takeaway, because there's a lot. First off, I'm sad. I'm very bummed out that this is over. The third day is a tough day because I love these people. I love being in the room talking, thank you. I love being in the room and walking in the atrium and having an opportunity to share time with other people of like minds and people who care about art and culture and music. So I'm sad that it's over, but I have to say again, thank you, the DCT, thank you, Your Excellency, thank you everyone for having me and having the Academy and the 24,000 members that I represent around the world of music creators. The other emotion I feel is I'm very thankful. I'm very thankful to be able to work, and much like like many of you, we get the chance to work in the coolest fields in the world, whether it's museums or other forms of art or expression, sharing what we do and telling stories and working and dealing in emotion and passion. That's rare. We're lucky to be able to do that. We're lucky to be able to work in this field. And then the other emotion that comes to mind is optimism and the feeling of knowing that there's this many people in this room that care about what we do and that care about utilizing culture and utilizing the humanity behind it for good and to make a difference in the world. And as we talked about, to reach the people around the globe, to change minds, change hearts. I talk a lot about that all the time, but I'm very optimistic because we're here to talk about how can we do it better, how can we do more, and how can we uplift through art and culture and history and preservation, all the great things that we've touched on this week. So those are some of my emotions.
Well, that's great to hear takeaways that are emotional. I like that. So insights, thoughts, but also how we're feeling. One thing that was spoken about, and we heard from Adonis, the great legendary cultural figure of the Arab world, this idea of what it means for humans given the pace of technology. And technology was one issue that came up several times. So I wanted to spend a bit of time as we wrap up thinking about technology and the impact of technology on preservation and certain things, but also how it's changing our experimentation with culture. Your Excellency, can I start with you thinking about that?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. First of all, Harvey, you can't call me Your Excellency. I'm your younger brother. You're a younger, more athletic brother.
Okay, you're right.
But so technology. We heard earlier today a fantastic keynote speech by Mohammed Al-Murr, which was beautiful. I mean, it was a masterclass in storytelling. I was sitting next to a colleague, and in the middle of his speech, I said, I've watched this movie way too many times. I watched Terminator way too many times. So I think when it comes to AI and technology, there's of course a mixture of fear, and then there's optimism. And I think creating that balance is imperative for us, and understanding that balance. I think utilizing it is critical, and controlling it is critical. We see firsthand right now, the lives that we're living, how controlling it the right manner can achieve substantially larger goals. Whether we are looking and using it in our archaeological fields and our digs, whether we are using it to truly immerse and expand art to a much wider audience. So it's working to our benefit in that regard. I was talking to Harvey this morning about sort of social media from a tech perspective, and how it was a double-edged sword. In one hand, you have a lot of information, some true, some not so true. When it comes to the musical front, it allows for almost a new music genre, which is short, 10 seconds, 15 second snippets, which again, we have to take into account that it creates a new creative sector that didn't exist 10 years ago. So we should acknowledge that. But on the other hand, it's a huge informative tool.
Right.
So when it comes to music, it is bringing classical music, it's bringing, my time's music to a greater public and helping them understand the art form of music. So you have to take these things into account. And of course, when it comes to AI specifically, we're working at the moment with AI tools on how to become an active curator. Now that doesn't mean we're eliminating the jobs of curators, but actually it is working hand in hand in actually speeding up the process. And whatever used to take us 3 months with our curator takes us now 6 weeks. But it's still the thought process, the intellectual thinking, the curatorial thought that comes into is still human scale. It's still coming from a human mind. We're just using AI as a tool to enhance and speed it up.
So efficiencies that are created in one way, but also reach, expanding reach. Harvey, I want to ask you how you approach this issue of technology, but also its impact on time, the time that you're able to save, making sure that music
I'm
gets
glad
better.
you asked me that question because I thought it was going to go around and it was going to come to me.
No, I'm breaking the order.
But this is so relevant and so important.
No, we started from the bottom up again.
That's right. We've taken Ernesto's recommendation.
I couldn't agree more that there's so much possibility in AI and there's so much opportunity and there's so much excitement around it. And when it comes time to making jobs easier or more efficient around certain areas of life, I agree. But when it comes to art and when it comes to human creativity, do we have to be faster? Is that what we're going for? Do we have to make things easier? Do we have to make things more homogeneous? I think that's the horrible outcome.
Amen.
Do we have to just make more money because a tech can replace or generate faster or make more? Is that the ultimate outcome we want? Maybe for producing shoes or doing archaeological digs, great, or medicine, the outcomes of medicine and how it can rebalance who's receiving good, equitable treatment. Yes, but replacing what we make from our souls and from our hearts and making that easy or making that disposable or making it mass producing it,
no.
Can't say I appreciate that.
I agree with you. But I think there are many things to worry about with AI, but I don't think it's fundamentally the creative sector has as much to worry about. I mean, I may be being naive, but the robot who was here last year, Ada, who many of us are still traumatized by, I did another project with it this year, and it involved people sending in their creative inspiration. It was part of a campaign from a well-known drinks brand that Baz Luhrmann was involved in, and the idea was that I was to find an artist, curate an artist who would respond to all of this, which of course a human artist would only be able to respond, or would be able to respond in a subjective way, and it would be kind of relative. But they wanted something that encapsulated everything. And I said, well, there's no way of doing it apart from, let's do an AI robot. So all this human inspiration was fed in algorithmically. And for 3 days in the Design Museum in London and 3 days in the factory in New York, Ada produced stuff based on this. And it was a fantastically interesting exercise, sociological, creative. People watched it, but it was literally like watching paint dry. The results were just an anodyne mishmash. And actually that's interesting culturally, isn't it? Because if we assimilate all culture, we get a kind of gloopy brown mess. If we can acknowledge difference, nuance, complexity, which is what we do as creative individuals, things are stronger. So creatively there isn't a problem. Or rather, there is less of a problem. It's how we harness it. But I think sociologically and politically, it is more worrying. And just to go back to the point about the Culture Summit, one of its many strengths is trying to bring power and politics and creative worlds together. And maybe the culture can start to at least help or give ideas as to how we might harness, critique, sometimes just ridicule what AI can do, as well as using it, but be aware of the dangers. Because we're not, it's not about an argument as to whether, which Harvey wasn't making, I'm not saying you were, but it's not an argument about whether it's fine for culture, but that's okay, because we're different from anywhere else. I mean, as Ernesto has said, culture got left behind back in the day, now it's moving more center stage. So culture and politics need to be kind of linked in this regard, but we in the cultural sector need to understand that the fears about AI are not our own creative areas, which I think are resilient. It's what happens in deep fakery, in fraud, in criminality, and so on. And that really does need legislating, and it's not too late to do it. Yeah. And even if the metaphor of the stable door being open and the horse bolting, so what? We have to push societally and culturally for that kind of framework, that kind of legislation.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point in terms of not saying culture is separate from this or actually coming across as defensive. Because what some people would say, oh, it's because creators are scared that you're going to replicate art or music, and therefore, but it's actually not being defensive, it's actually being open and saying, we want to protect what's great about the human and use technology where it's useful. Ernesto, did you want to comment on that?
Yes, I will not speak as UNESCO because you're going to kill me when I come back. But
please don't get into much trouble.
No, but
please do.
We like him.
The reflection on artificial intelligence. 3 years ago, we had this recommendation on ethics at UNESCO. It was unanimous. So it was a recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence. When you try to find how it affects the culture sector, it's not clear in the text. It's not clear. I'm elegant. We don't see culture anywhere. Today, the reflection is the following. We are using, internally, artificial intelligence for the needs of data recollection because we need it. We don't have any measurements in culture sector that can be comparable from sector to sector, from country to country. So it's become very important to find a way to use it. But when it's come to the artist, the creation, we have to regulate. Sorry, nobody wants to talk about it, but we have to regulate now. Yeah. It's going so fast that right now we are talking and there are new algorithms that is over our head. So now it's the moment where member states have to sit together, put all their differences, and they have together, and try to framework where are the limits, and if we are trying right now in this moment to reshape the status of artists around the world, well, we have to put this into discussion. And each country has to make a commitment. Do we want creators to continue to have a power to change our society, or we're going to give this to algorithms to decide for us what to do? Because that's at the end. Sorry. They will kill me, I know. But we have to advance. What I'm saying is that that's a starting point of a dialogue. But we have to go very quick. That's why I spoke about urgency. Because it's so fast that when you speak with musicians, I have a lot of friends that are musicians, they say, well, I was contacted to create some elements, some notes to say, and they say, I'm conflicted because if I say no, it's like I'm against innovation.
Right.
And that's not what it is. It's our right to create. And this is something that will never be taken from artists. I'm sorry. I don't believe that artificial intelligence will transform the creation. It's a new form of creation. But they have to pay. There's a creator behind. And after COVID, we know that it becomes one of the livelihoods that artists have in the global south. Sorry.
Absolutely.
But it will be one of the, if we have a new pandemic, I can assure you, if a musician cannot be on stage, they have to find ways to have livelihoods. And it will be what they can collect for the use of their creation.
Absolutely.
And one of the problems is that usually the onus is on the creator to protect rather than actually the systems and the regulation. So that's one key issue to talk about. But also, Ernesto, what you were talking about, if there's another pandemic. And the pandemic, 4 or 5 years on, we're still talking about the impact it's had on our societies and physical space, being present in the moment in a physical space. And Richard, I wanted to turn to you about that. Because in some ways, technology has helped greatly for people to visit exhibitions, see it from afar. But at the same time, it hasn't replaced that importance of that.
And it can't. I think what Harvey said is really at the core of the issue. And it's what I meant to infer when I said have courage.
Yeah.
Because for creators, the more they recognize who they are and discover ultimately how unique they are, the richer it is their contribution can be. And one thing that we can say to one another is it is artificial intelligence. It's not our intelligence, and our intelligence can expand in so many different ways. And the more eccentric and more confident we become, I think the better it is for our futures together.
Amen.
So we have about 5 minutes or so where I'm going to ask you one question for each of you, which is, before we meet next year, inshallah, if you'll have us back.
Absolutely.
Before we meet next year, inshallah, what is one outcome you'd like to see, given all the dynamics we've just now discussed, to take us to a better future and to really support the cultural sector? So, Harvey, I'm going to start bottom up.
Bottom up, all right. By next year, if we haven't done all that we can to reorient and refocus and reposition assets, resources, attention on the creative industries and culture, then I feel like we've missed an opportunity. As you touched on, this is a critical time. We must move with urgency, and we have to move quickly and intentionally. My hope and my goal is in the next 12 months before we come back is that we can continue to push legislatively with support and ecosystem building, upskilling, infrastructure resetting, all the things that need to take place so creators of all kinds, no matter what type of art you create, what type of cultural institution you work through or with, that you can continue to do what you do so that can move people together, can bring people to see things differently, change narratives, change opinions, change minds, and unify. This is what we need now more than ever, is the people in this room to come together to support creators, to support culture, to bring citizens of the world together, because we are not in a good place. We know this. And it's going to depend on us, our voices, the people that you all represent, the people that you all support. It's going to take those voices to make the difference that I think we need in this time.
Tim.
I think the idea of giving voice to individual creators and acknowledging that, which in a sense goes to what Anessa just said, is important. But I would go for a kind of more meta position on this. And I think that the urgency with which so many voices at this summit have been talking about in reconfiguring our relationship to our environment. And although that's just a big umbrella idea, we need to start to give much more prominence to those architects, designers, people who think about time, space, creativity, material in different ways, because we need to start thinking about a relationship from the planet's perspective or from the environment's perspective rather than our own. And that is a massive sea change, and it's a difficult thing to do, but that would be my takeaway.
I'm sorry to be Tim's poodle, but I do think that if we don't come to grips with what's going on in the deterioration of the environment, we won't have a summit shortly. And to me, that's the greatest urgency.
So all efforts, energies, focus, keep the environment
And also,
in mind.
it's important that we conduct our lives in the same fashion. It's an expression of your sort of morality and your belief in future and the people around you, not to mention nature itself.
Ernesto.
Yes, at the end we're talking about values, not as we understand in the classical sense of what it means, and the different values that we can have in our societies, in our way of living. But we have built a mandate that we took as part of the Mondiacult Declaration, and that was the first meeting of the follow-up here at the summit of the ministers, is that, and you mentioned, at the UN level, you need to have targets.
Yeah.
We have the 2030 agenda, we have 17 goals, we are far away of obtaining it, but when you have environment, climate crisis, when you're talking about education, everybody knows where we should go. It doesn't mean that we are going there. With culture, we've been struggling the last 10 years without knowing what it means, why it's important, why we have to support it, how to convince Minister of Finance to put more money where it should be, how civil society can take culture as part of their own daily life and to put it forward. So we have the mandate to not only advocate to have this one standalone goal in whatever is starting to be built after, beyond 2030, but to have all the voices possible, not only the ministry level, not only at the high level politicians. It's about all field of creation, all director of institution to be beyond. I remember when I was studying management, cultural management, 30 years ago, one day they said, imagine that you have strike in all museums around the world. People will go out the street to make manifestation? No, it will not happen. And we experienced for 6 months the closure of museums. Well, how beautiful will be the world if it happens and we go all to the streets asking to reopen museums. That's my dream. So I'm supporting you.
Your Excellency, your call to action for us before we reconvene next year.
It's a pledge. And I think what we have done here collectively, what we've accomplished here, is create a safe ground, a place where we connect ministers, we connect, like I said, government, semi-government, private sector, and NGOs, artists, and everybody beyond on an equal pedestal. And I think this is what makes this place special. You know, you can be an artist sitting side by side with a minister of culture, and you can basically express what your needs and what your wants. And your voice is going to be heard here. So the pledge is that this is going to continuously happen, year in, year out. And the success of this summit, really, if everybody here can allow me, can everybody stand up for a second?
Do I stand up?
I guess we'll stop us. Take a bow, everybody. You are the success. Thank you. And as we've heard from these amazing gentlemen, you know, we all grew up at some point. We're all young kids here. Everybody was a young kid. And I think many of us, including for sure myself, I didn't dream that I could be sitting here next to Ernesto, in front of Tim, Harvey on my left, Richard on my right. This is basically cultural royalty. Around us all here, you have amazing artists, musicians, practitioners. It's a dream come true. Now, to be totally honest, we have to give back because of that dream. It's our duty, all of us, it's our duty to listen. It's our duty to give back, regardless where we're from, regardless what positions we're in. So here at the summit, here at the Abu Dhabi, our capital city, it's our duty to make sure that not just our culture and our heritage is preserved, but your culture, your heritage. It's our duty to be a helping hand. It's our duty to share, and it's our duty to welcome you to your second home. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well done, man.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thanks.
Very well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you.